Hey everybody, welcome to Cycling Videos Online, your gateway to indoor cycling adventures. I hope you're ready to have a little bit of fun. Today's ride was filmed in Sacramento, right along the American River Trail. And we were time trialing our way from Folsom, California on a 30-mile trail to American River Trail down to Sacramento. And it was a tough ride because it was fast and it's difficult. And get ready to have some fun because we're going to work. All right? See you in Sacramento. You are listening to the default audio track, which contains instructional narrative and music. The second audio track will eliminate the music. The third audio track eliminates the instruction, and the fourth simply has the sounds of the rides. Apparently, there is a coaching available. Woohoo! So welcome everybody to Folsom. Let's start pedaling. We're in Folsom, California, which is about 20 miles or so west of Sacramento. And it's kind of up in the foothills just when the Sierra Nevadas are just starting to climb. And it's a really cool little town. I mean, the downtown here is very quaint. I usually like to come and end here, or come from Sacramento, stop here, grab some lunch, and head back. But today's ride's a little different. So we're just warming up the legs here because this is going to be a very long and intense, pretty brutal TT effort for the full, well, I'm not going to say a full hour and a half. It really starts to pick up in about 15 minutes, so get ready for that. So we're filming this in the early spring of 2008, and I drove up from Sacramento. My dad was in the hotel sleeping. It's but early in the morning. I tend not to leave this early usually. But the plan was to park up here, ride down, get Dad, ride back, have lunch, and then hop in the car and drive home. And I told my dad what time I should be back down. And I said I gave myself about an hour and a half to get down the 30-mile trail, which in hindsight was a little bit presumptive. Because I'm thinking, hour and a half, 30 miles, doing the math, that's maybe 18, 20 mile an hour average. Boy, oh boy, I'm going to have to really work for this one. And I filmed this during a time when I was racing, and I was actually doing quite a few time trial events. And so I really used this as a opportunity to train for the races. And the TT wasn't my best event, wasn't my worst event, but I really admire and respect it. And whether you're training to race or not, time trialing or being disciplined time trialer is a really excellent skill to develop. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to do it. We're going to talk a little bit about the strategies. We're going to talk about why it's important and what you can, how you can improve your health and fitness as a result. So we're going to go start spinning it up here. Take a look at the credits there, and we're going to get going, adding some resistance. Heart rate's coming up, getting up close to 70%. That pedaling cadence right around 90 RPM. Feeling the ups and downs in the trail. And we're going to just bring that heart rate up little by little here, adding a little more speed up to about 75%. Let's get those legs warmed up. Keep that cadence up nice and high. Just having fun on this beautiful trail, beautiful day. Keeping that speed up. Woohoo. Letting that heart rate come up. Let's get acclimated, get warmed up to the efforts. And we want to keep that cadence up nice and high. So, we got the dashboard in front of us. Let me give you an idea how to use it. Now, there's a few things that I'm not looking at right now that you are, as I'm going to add these after the recording here. So you're seeing heart rate, you're seeing cadence, you're seeing a resistance value, and you're seeing a couple of maps. Now we're going to really focus on that heart rate, because that's a pretty significant defining role for a time trial event. And we're also going to play around a little bit with that cadence later on. You get an idea of where you might have effective cadences at. And you're seeing a new resistance and torque meter. And that resistance is more of an arbitrary definition of how the trail is feeling on your legs. So right now, our resistance is fairly low. I can't see it, so I don't know what it's going to spit out at us, but I'm guessing we're somewhere around a 2 or a 3. So you keep your eyes on that. And that resistance is a new tool which is created, there, just added resistance. The tool is created by using cadence and power, and it's calculating the torque, and then that torque is converted into a resistance value, bringing up that speed. So basically, if you're on your bike trainer and if you've got a double chainring in the front and like a 10 speed in the back or so, those resistance values 1 through 10 will cover about up to a 7. So your small ring up front and your easiest gear is going to give you a 1 or a 2 resistance. And then your hardest gear with the small ring up front will deliver up to about a 7. And then your big ring up front with your smallest in the back starts out at a 3 and it'll take you up to a full 10 out of 10. Just trying to lay it down here, guys. Let's go. Heart rate's up. Almost 90. So it's a little more complicated for the cyclists on their trainer. But this, you're going to want to basically choose a resistance and a cadence. Look at your heart rate. And if your heart rate is on pace with the one in the window, you're doing good. We're working. Let's go. 90% of max. So your heart rate at 90%, we're using basically a generic heart rate for an age. So what you need to do is figure out what your max heart rate is. Either plug it into your computer and let your computer calculate the max for you, or you're going to have to write down or remember your heart rate zones as a percent of max. It's not that complicated. A lot of heart rate monitors, especially if you're in the gym, are only going to show you your heart rate in beats per minute. And so what you need to do is figure out what your heart rate is or what your percentage of max is at a specific beats per minute. So let's say you've determined your heart rate either by formula or by testing to be 180 beats per minute. I think that's what mine's at right now. And then you're going to look at your heart rate monitor, and it's going to read something out to you like 100 and 160, for example. So then you're going to take that 160 and divide it by your maximum. So if your maximum is 180, take 160, divide that by 180, and whatever number that spits out, say 84% as an example, well then that's your heart rate at 84% of max. And so what I do is I write down what my heart rate is at 60%, 65%, 70, 75, and so on, all the way up to 100. So if my computer is telling me that I'm supposed to be at 80% of max, I just look at my sheet of paper, say what is that heart rate at 80%, and then I'm going to pedal for that number. And this particular ride is a fairly steady effort, so we're not fluctuating or varying it too much. There's not really too many hills. It's mostly downhill on a fairly flat to rolling trail. So what we need to do is basically dial in that cadence and heart rate. So cadence at 100, how much resistance do you need to add to your bike or your spin bike to bring your heart rate up to 84%? I think we're at 83 right now. And that's how you do that. And you kind of use that resistance value to give you a good indicator of what gear your bike is in, needs to be in, or how much resistance you're applying to your legs at that specific cadence to deliver that heart rate. So as we add more resistance and we're keeping that cadence up, that heart rate's going to respond pretty quickly to that change in demand. As we take off resistance, the heart rate comes down a little. But one thing you'll notice is that heart rate responds a little quicker to the addition of effort and a little quicker to the subtraction of effort. So you take off a little resistance and your heart rate's going to lag high for a little bit, and then it drops. And then all of a sudden, your heart rate is lower than what you were wanting. And that's kind of normal. And it's one of the disciplines that we're factoring when doing a time trial. because what we're trying to do is maintain a steady effort throughout the duration of the ride or race. We're not going to surge too much. Our heart rate isn't going to spike, and it's not going to rest. So that's kind of the value of the time trial, is you're maintaining a high heart rate through the event. Adding some resistance, a little climby. Letting the heart rate come down a little bit, coming through an area that's a little more crowded. We're at the fish hatchery here. Well, let's deliver. Come on. So discipline is key in a TT effort. We're shifting here. This gets real steep. Let's go ahead and get up this hill. Grind up it. Good. Taking off that resistance. And we're going to coast down. Nice job. All right. Hope you guys have a lot of water. This one gets sweaty. So now that we're past the fish hatchery, we're going to start seeing increased efforts and a very steady resistance. There will be some variation, as you know, we're trying to regulate, but every once in a while we get a little high, so we got to back off, and every once in a while we're a little low, so we got to apply more effort. And then to boot, we got other cyclists on this trail, other carrots, and it gets kind of exciting when you catch a carrot. Keeps you motivated. Bringing up our cadence, heart rate's coming back up. Speed's coming up, and we're going to just apply that power nice and smoothly as we get our heart rate up to its target. And then once we get closer to that target, We're going to back the effort off a little bit and let that heart rate come up more slowly. So what we don't want to do is shoot for that time trial heart rate all at once. We want to work up to it and then back off or apply a little power as needed. So it's really important that you have the tools to do this. Heart rate monitor, cadence, and power comes in very handy. Because with these tools, you don't rely on guesswork. And that prevents you from blowing through those targets, those goals. We'll talk more about that later. For those of you who are thinking of racing, of doing a time trial, it's a lot of fun. And you know, there's something about the race. It's really hard to lock down what's special about it, but it's a feeling that you only get when you're doing the TT. The excitement before the race, the excitement during the race, and the feel that you get after it. And part of that excitement comes from, well, the crowds, you know, the fact that you're putting on a number, and the process by where you're psyching yourself out. You know, people are, you know, on their trainers in the parking lot, warming up, walking around in cleats, strapping on numbers, talking to friends. Looking at the road in front of them, trying to figure out what they're going to encounter, hoping everything goes smooth. And then the bikes are cool, you know, the solid disc wheels, the aero bars, the aero helmets, and the skin suits. Just kind of creates a different kind of air about the whole day. Heart rate just under 90. Keeping the speed up. We got a long way to go. Hour left. Uh-oh. There's carrots up ahead. That can take you off your game. No factor. Keeping it up. Let's go. So, you're asking yourself, should I spend the money on the equipment? And that answer really depends on how well you want to do, because ultimately decreasing wind resistance is the most important aspect of the race. One of the most important is you're by yourself. There's no draft. And you want to put yourself in a position where you're as aerodynamic as possible, efficient, comfortable. Bringing that effort up right here. Let's go.
How to use the dash. The dashboard is composed of a number of different tools that provide data which allow you to emulate the physical demands of the ride. The first and most important tool on the dash is the effort meter. The effort meter provides a graphical representation of how hard you should be working during a specific part of the ride. In this video, we're ascending a small climb while trying to keep a good pace for other riders behind us. Watch how the effort increases as we continue to ascend. The effort meter is color-coded to help you quickly know what zone you should be training in, be it the weight loss zone, aerobic zone, anaerobic zone, or red zone. Each zone is based on a percentage of your maximum effort. Blue, which is below 70%, is your weight loss zone. Green, between 70 to 79% of max, is your aerobic zone. Yellow, between 80 to 89% of max, is your anaerobic zone. And red, from 90 to 100% of max, is your red zone. Be aware that the difficulty of each video is greatly dependent on the time spent in each zone. At the top of the effort meter is your heart rate goal displayed as a percentage of your max. Percent of max is calculated as your actual heart rate divided by your max. This value can be used to challenge yourself further by teaching your body how to precisely regulate efforts. Some heart rate monitors allow you to input your max heart rate and then automatically calculate your percentage of max. The gear ratio and resistance indicator provides you with two ways to determine what gear or what resistance you should be working at. The gear ratio is the best way to make changes in resistance if you're on your bike and trainer. With shifters, you can quickly make changes to gearing to simulate changes in pedaling effort. This animation provides an idea of how the gear ratio works. Notice how above the blue line, the numbers are ascending from 1 to 10. This corresponds to the gear that's in your rear cassette. Below the blue line are the two rings in the front, 42 being the small ring, 52 being the large. The resistance value is a tool to be used if you're on a spin bike. Most spinners are comfortable with a 1 to 10 scale used in classes. Basically, a 1 is a soft pedaling, easy spin resistance, whereas a 10 is a slow, leg-churning, difficult grind where you have to force the crank arms to turn. The cadence value allows you to identify what your pedaling cadence should be. While the cadence, resistance, and heart rate indicators attempt to synchronize, often it's difficult to match everything at the same time. Start out using either cadence or resistance while matching the effort goals. Much like the effort tool, the power tool provides a graphical representation of how much power the cyclist is producing during a given time. The power tool is a nice alternative or backup to the resistance and gear ratio tools. The power tool is a much more accurate way to identify sudden changes in power. At the top of this tool is a number that reflects a percentage of maximum power. What is maximum power, you might ask? This is a little bit more tricky. Unlike max heart rate, your max power is a minimum average over a given time interval. For example, suppose you're sprinting for the finish line. The competition is fierce, and you're out of the saddle hustling for all you're worth. You cross the finish 30 seconds after you begin your sprint and then rest. Now, suppose you're looking at the power profile for this effort. You might discover that the first 5 seconds you're generating about 800 watts. During the next 5 seconds, you're generating 750 watts. And then after that, 700 watts, and so on. As you get tired, your power slowly tapers off. Finding your max power over 30 seconds is simply an average power output over that 30-second interval. This is a much more accurate means of finding your max than trying to find an instantaneous max power output. Your percentage of max is calculated by dividing your current power output by your max. Most power computers can automatically generate the percentage of max value for you. The dashboard has 3 graphs. These are a really cool way to find out where you're located along the timeline of the ride. The graphs are divided by a bar, showing you where you're located along them. The top graph displays a hill profile. The middle graph displays the effort profile, and the bottom displays the power profile. Keeping your eyes on these are a great way to identify changes as they approach. The moving map provides some nice information about where you're cycling. Roads, topography, landmarks, rivers, lakes, and more can be identified so you don't feel lost on the ride. Also note, north is always up. I'm done. Have a great workout.